In this week's parsha speaks about three different types of nisim that the Rebbeinu Shalom performs in the world. And he says this in relationship to the faith of the Mei Mariva, which he discusses at length. The Sipurnai is usually very brief. This is a very, very long Sipurnai. So the Sipurnai writes, the first type of nes is ha'echad hu nes hanister kama yiridas motor. The first type of nes, the Sipurnai, is when it rains, it's a nes. We look at rain, we think that's it rains. You know, it was hot today, it was humid today. So then you had a cold front passing through, it sets off thunderstorms. That's why it rains. Well, that's why it rains, but the pshat is the Rebbeinu Shalom is acting b'derech hateva. But it's the Rebbeinu Shalom acting, it's a nes that it rains. If it wouldn't rain, there wouldn't be crops. But this is what we refer to as a nes b'derech hateva. That's the first type of nes. The Sipurno continues, the Zokta Sipurnai v'hikimoleit min hachaloyim u'min hatzoreis v'zeh hamin min hanisim yasiguhu atzadikim bitfiloson. There's another type of nes nister. This is all in the same category. And that is that when a person is sick, or he has tzaris, goes to a tzaddik, the tzaddik davens on his behalf, and the person is cured or is spared from the tzaris that he is enduring. That's a nes. That's also a nes that the tzaddik has the kayach to go ahead and to be mispal for a person to cure what ails him. Again, but you go to the tzaddik, the doctor then prescribes medicine, you become cured, and you say, oh, it was the medicine that did it. When actually, it was the medicine acting because of the tefillah of the tzaddik. The second category of nes, the Sipurna writes, Hu hanes hanigla lo yuchal hateva la'seisei ba'isa ha'ifan aval ya'sei lachar tnuais rabbis k'inyan hashlichei hu'arza. The second type of nes, the Sipurna writes, is when you go ahead, Moshe Rabbeinu took his staff, he threw it down on the ground, and it turned into a snake, which is keneged derech hateva. When we throw down brooms, they don't turn into snakes. So Zokta Ramban, Zokta Sipurna, that's a more evident, overt type of nes. But it's not the highest form of nes, because Zokta Sipurna, it involves an activity. Moshe Rabbeinu had to do a pa'ula. He had to take his stick and he had to throw it on the ground. Hagimel Zokta Sipurna, the highest form of nes, Humin Hanisim Shlo Yuchal Hateva La'aseisi B'Shemaifen V'zeh Hamin Yasei Yisbarach Ha'yedei Avodav B'Dibur Bilvad. It's the highest form of nes, which is also against the laws of nature, that the Rebbeinu Shalom performs through his avodim B'Dibur Levad. The tzaddik or the navi doesn't have to do anything, all he does is speak. That is a higher form of nes. The context of which the Sipurna is speaking is that to have gotten water from the rock by speaking to the rock rather than hitting the rock is a higher form of nes, because since there was no physical activity involved, and yet the Seder Hateva, the laws of nature were changed, the rock gave forth water, that was a higher form of nes. This is what he explains in the context of the Chet of Mei Mariva. Rabbi say this gives us the opportunity to speak about an inyan which we have never spoken about before, and that is the inyan of going to a tzaddik, a chacham, a rebbe, a rav, a rashiva, and asking them to daven on your behalf. And is this something that a person should do? Is it something that a person should not do? What exactly is the rationale behind such a concept of going to somebody else to daven for you? Does this person act as an intermediary? Is he not acting as an intermediary? This is the subject of tonight's shir. Asking a tzaddik or chacham to be mispal on your behalf. To answer the first question, is this a good thing to do or is it not a good thing to do? The answer to that question is unequivocal. It is a good thing to do because it is a halacha that is paskin in Shulchan Aruch. The Ramah in Yeridea in Siman Shin Lamed Hey in Yeridea Sif Yud the Ramah paskins Yesh Oimrim Shemi Sheyesh Leichayla Beveisai Yelech Eitzel Chacham Shebe'ir Sheyevakesh Olav Rachamim. That any person who has a sick person in his household who needs a refuah, he should go to the Chacham Shebe'ir. He should go to the Ramah doesn't say the tzaddik of the year, he just says the chacham of the year, the biggest Talmud Chacham in the city, and he should ask the Talmud Chacham to daven on behalf of the person that's sick. The Ramah brings this in the name of a Yesh Omer. The Yesh Omer that the Ramah refers to over here is the Nemuki Yosef in Bava Basra. The Nemuki Yosef in Bava Basra really is based on an explicit and beferish Gemara in Bava Basra, Kufta Zayin, where the Gemara says, Dorash of Pinchas Bar Choma, Kol Sheyesh Leichayla B'Seich Beisa, Yelech Eitzel Chacham, V'Yevakish Olav Rachamim. Dino de Gemara, a Mefurish Gemara, a person who has someone sick in his household should go to the Chacham, and he should be Mavakish Olav Rachamim. The Gemara then quotes a pasuk in Mishlei to buttress this case. So what the Nemuki Yosef is doing is that this is a memra in the Gemara. There's several members over there. The Nemuki Yosef is bringing this. This is where the Ramah is coming from. It is based on a Nemuki Yosef that bases it on a Beferish Gemara. Someone has someone sick or some kind of tzara, go to the Talmud Chacham Shebe'ir. That's a Gemara. Ma'aser Rav. Not only is this a Gemara, but we find Gemaras that we find that this was in fact a practice among the Tanoim and Amoraim. The Gemara says in Masechta Brachos on Daf Lamed Daled Lamed Beis, Tana Rabbanon, Ma'aser Shechola B'nai Shal Rabban Gamliel, Shigar Shnei Talmidei Chachamim Eitzel Rab Chanina Ben Daisa. Rabban Gamliel's son was sick, even though Rabban Gamliel himself was a Talmud Chacham Shebe'ir, but nevertheless he went ahead and he sent two messengers to Rab Chanina ben Daisa that he should ask Rachmanis on behalf of his son. So not only is this a Dina the Gemara, it is a Maisa in the Gemara. Yes, this concept has precedence that even predates the Gemara. The Ramban al-HaTorah in Parshas Yisro, on the pasuk, Ki Yavai Elai Ha'am Lidreish Elokim, where Moshe Rabbeinu explains to Yisro the duties that he has, that people come Lidreish Eso Elokim, people come to him to seek the word of God, which most of us learned that parsha to mean that people came to Moshe Rabbeinu for Dinei Torah. They had a din to paskin. They didn't know a halacha. So the Ramban says it was not only Dinei Torah that they came to Moshe Rabbeinu for. They came Lidreish Elokim. What is Lidreish Elokim? To seek out God. Zok the Ramban Mefurish lehispalol al chayleihem ulahitiyem mayidaber lehem kizeh yikra drisas Elokim. There were people that were sick in the time of the Midbar. So who did you go to? You went to Moshe Rabbeinu and you said, Moshe Rabbeinu, please be mispalel on behalf of so-and-so. V'chein yasuim ha-neviim. Zok the Ramban, this was common practice with the Nevi'im. Kamo shomar lifnim bi-Yisrael koyamar ho'ish bolachta lidrish alokim lechuvanelcha ad haroya. V'chein the Ramban shtol su v'darashtas Hashem yoso lemar ha'echya mechayli zeh. Ironically, what we quoted last week, when Ben Hadad went and sent to the Navi Elisha, who wanted to know whether he was going to live from his sickness or not, this was an example, Dr. Ramban, of going to the Isha Elokim to find out what my story is, but more specifically to daven on my behalf. So Rabbi Say, Dover Zeh, Mefurish b'Torah, v'shanui b'Neviim, u'meshulish b'Ksuvim, v'nifsak lahalacha l'maisen Shulchan Aruch, that a person who yesh leichayla b'seich beisai, yelech etol chacham shebe'ir, that he should be mispalel for the chayla or for the gevisset tzara. So you may be asking yourself at this point, if you have ever had, chas v'sholom, someone sick in your home, how come you have never gone to the Chacham Shebeir and asked him to be mispalel on behalf of the Chayla? This is a Gemara, it's a Makar in Torah, it's a Befur Shadin. How come we don't do that? So the emes is, Rabbi say, we do this. Well, we have mentioned this before in the Shir. This, Rabbi say, is what a Misha Beirach is all about. Which means that if everyone who had illness in his household will come to the Rav, or to the Rashiva, or to the Rebbe, or to whoever it may be, that would be almost a full-time occupation on their behalf. And therefore, to lighten the load, we have instituted this concept, if in the presence of the Sefer Torah, we make a Mishaberach, we may say the name of the Chayla, the Rav, Rebbe, Rashiva, whoever's there says Amen, and that, Rabbi Sai, is our, at least, kiyum of this halacha of Yelech Yissocher Frand. For Steitzach, Rabbi Sai, it would be preferable if the time permitting, on the time of our busy Rabbanim, it's avada, even more effective to go to the Rav, to tell him the tzara, to ask him to be mispal. But in lieu of that, time not permitting, resources not permitting, kaiches not permitting, whatever it is, at least we're mekayim this halacha through the institution of Misha Beirach. Yes?
What about I know you obviously do it, but what about inserting into the flame?
Avada. I mean, that's a personal thing that a person himself does. But you say it in Rafaynu, but this institution of going to the Chacham Shebeir, we're mekayim to Misha Beirach. The Tzitz Eliezer in Chelek Tes Siman Yud Zayin raises, however, the following point. How come the Rambam or the Tur do not bring this Gemara? This is a Beferish Gemara in Bava Basra, Bali Chelek. The Ramah only mentions it in the name of a Yesh Eimrim, the Rambam or the Tur, and for that matter the Shulchan Aruch himself, the Shulchan Aruch doesn't paskin it. It's only the Ramah. Why does means the Rambam, other than in Hilchas Deis, the Rambam is not an Eitz Tova book. It is a halacha book. The Shulchan Aruch is a halacha book. And therefore the Rambam only paskins that which is a halacha mufureshes. This concept of going to the Chacham Shebeir is a good idea. It makes sense. It's the smart thing to do. But it's not a din. If a person doesn't do this, he's not in violation of a din. You want your tefillas to be effective, get the tzaddik of the city, get the chacham of the city involved. But it's not a halacha mufureshes, and as such the Rambam doesn't bring it. Zok the Tzitz Eliezer, an afgemina la halacha la maisa, whether this is a din or whether this is an eitz tova. Afgemina Rabbi is, what do you think of the following situation? Someone has a chayla, there's a chayla not in your house necessarily, but perhaps in your next door neighbor's house. The person is very ill. So you decide you want to go ahead, you want to be mekayim this halacha of Chacham Shebeir. Except you're not satisfied with the local Chacham Shebeir. You want to go to the Gadol Hador, to the Tzaddik Hador. So you go ahead, you book a flight, you fly there to Yisrael for $799. You go into who you consider the Gadol or Tzaddik Hador, you ask him to be mispalel, you come back, the person has a refuah shleima, you tell him what you did, and you say to him, by the way, I'd like you to pick up the plane fare retroactively. You allowed to do that or not? So Zokta Tzitz Eliezer, what would be the din? What would be the din? If, given the same circumstance, you have a neighbor that's sick, but rather than going to Eretz Yisrael to go to a Chacham or a Tzaddik, you go ahead and you hire the best specialist in this area of medicine. And you go ahead and you bring him down from wherever he may be, you bring him on the case, you go ahead, you pick up the medical bill, and you pay for it. Are you allowed later on to go to the person and to say, listen, I went and brought in the specialist, I picked up the cost, Baruch Hashem, you're better now, but at least reimburse me for the cost of bringing in the specialist. What do you think, Rabbi Say, the halacha is? The halacha is, Rabbi Say, that not only can you be reimbursed for that which you brought in the specialist, but even if the guy died, you go to the Yisayimim and you say to the Yisayimim, I put out this money for your father, Olav Hashalom, would you please reimburse me? Azei zok steht in Tshuvas Harosh. The Tshuvas Harosh Klal Pehei Simen Beis Nishal B'Hitzol Shehotziu HaKroivim B'Reifei. That hotzos, expenses that people laid out for a doctor or b'refuais im yesh lepara minichsei haYisayimim acharei shelotziva sheyasu elu hahotzos. This was the Rosh Hashanah. Can you go to the Yisayimim and now say, pay up for the expenses that I incurred? Paskins the Rosh. There is no excuse. The Yisrael can say, who asked you to bring in this doctor? That was your bright idea, not my idea. Because it is commonly known that when a person gets sick, people don't, sometimes they're not physically able to make decisions to do this. Not only relatives, but a person, a friend, a neighbor. Paskins the Rosh, you can be reimbursed because what you were doing was pikuach nefesh, v'chol hazoris hareze meshubach. And therefore, if this would be a din, if this would be a halacha that you're mechuyev to go to the tzaddik ka'ir, so then a case could perhaps be made that if I incurred hotzos, if I incurred expenses by going to the tzaddik ka'ir, me, the car of the neighbor, etc., I could be reimbursed. Zokta Tzitz Eliezer, this is an afgamida la halacha. This is not a din. This is an eitzah taiva. You don't have to pay for people's eitzah taivas. Azei paskinta. So that's why the Rambam didn't bring this. Of course, I mean, he shouldn't fly first class. Well, the pshat is hazeh. I mean, Zokan Shalom, the fun of is when it's a kulei schus. This is a schus that came with the big price tag. And one could question whether it was effective. So this is not something that is a kulei schus. Moreover, the way the Meiri learns pshat in that Gemara, Rabbi Say, that Gemara Bava Basra with which we started, the Misha Yishlei Chayla B'Sech B'Leisei Yerichetz Al Chacham Shebir V'Yispal Ba'adai, the Meiri learns a different pshat in the whole Gemara. And we find many times, Rabbi said, there's even a sefer that's written about this. We find many times that the Meiri and the Rambam go with the same ma'alach. There's even a sefer called Biurei HaRambam Lefi HaMeiri. It shows many different Shver Rambams from Rav David Ber Zuckerman many different Shver Rambams, the Rambam is matur because he learned from the Gemara like the Meiri. How does the Meiri learn that Gemara in Bava Basra? Zok the Meiri over there in Bava Basra, Mishi yesh leitzar oichayla b'seich beisay oyechad b'minei hatzaras yelech etzel chochav v'yispalal heimenu darkei hatfilois v'yevakesh rachamim. According to the Meiri, you know what the Gemara means? You go to the Chacham Shebir not to daven for you, but to ask the Chacham Shebir how to daven. Because many times our tefillas perhaps aren't effective is because we're not saying it the right way, we're not articulating it correctly, we don't know how to daven. So you go to the Chacham Shebir not to daven for you or to daven for the Chayla, but to ask him, how do you daven? What should I say? What kapitel film should I say? What should I do? The Melit's portion why the Rambam didn't bring it, because the Rambam brought in Hilchas Mikr and Hilchas Ovel. The Rambam tells you have to daven for the Chayla. Now how do you daven? Oh, the Gemara tells you in Bava Basra. If you don't know how to daven, go to the Chacham Shebir. Matter of fact, according to this Meiri, Rabbi say we could stop right here. There's no shir tonight, because according to the Meiri, there's no such din. You go to someone to ask him to daven for you. It's you go to someone to find out how you should daven. The Tzitz Eliezer, this one that I'm quoting over here, is really in response to, it's part of a larger tshuva. And the tshuva over there deals with a different question. And that is, Rabbi Sai, given that this is a din, at least the way the Ramah learns it, or it's a Eitz Taiva, that Yelech it's a Chacham Shebir v'yispal ba'adai. The question that he really is dealing with over here in this tshuva, and also in an earlier tshuva, is can you be Machal Shabbos to get the Chacham Shebir to daven for you? Which means a person is Yesh Leichayla b'seich beisai. And the person's he knows if his Rav would know about this, if his Rosh Yeshiva would know about this, if his Rebbe would know about this, then the Rebbe could do something. The person took a turn for worse on Shabbos. The Rebbe Veisnit, my Rosh Yeshiva Veisnit, what should I do? So the question that he is asked is, we know that Pikuach Nefesh is Deicha Shabbos. If this would be a question that he needs medicine, there would be no question in the world. You hop in the car, or at least you hop in a cab, you go to the pharmacy, you get the medicine. So over here, the halacha is the person taking a turn for worse. Eitz a time the Rambam brings Yelech Etzel Chav Yispal Ba'adai. It's Shabbos. Can I go ahead, if not drive myself, but can I get into a cab at least? I'm your lakum. Go to the Rebbe, go to the Rav, go to the Rosh Yeshiva and tell him so-and-so is taken for a turn the worst. Daven for him on Shabbos. Pikuach Nefesh Deicha Shabbos. Sok the Tzitz Eliezer, loy with an aleph. You're not allowed to do that. Why? And this is really part of a larger discussion which we touched on in other shiurim, and that is because we are not allowed to be Mechalel Shabbos except for the types of refuahs that work al pi derech hateva. We're not allowed to use types of Chil Shabbos except for medicines that are standard medical procedures. Something, for instance, that is a skula. Sometimes refuahs, they work the skula, they work miraculously. Can you do that on Shabbos? According to the Rambam, at least, you certainly cannot. So therefore, we're not denying chas v'sholom that the tefillah of the tzaddik or the tefillah of the chacham works. Avada it works. Avada, it's effective. But it is, as the Sipurna writes, l'maylo miderach hateva. You're not allowed to go ahead and employ, you're not allowed to be Mochal Shabbos for types of refuahs that are not, they don't heal the derech hateva. A person has strep throat, you go ahead and you take penicillin. A person has strep throat, Avada, having the Rebbe daven that he should be healed also helps. But you can't be Mochal Shabbos for that. And he quotes a tshuva from Reb Shlomo Kluger. That Reb Shlomo Kluger was made aware of a situation where a Rav in a certain city, Paskin, that the guy, you had a guy who was sick, and they wanted the Rav to know about it. So the Rav, this other Rav Paskin, that you could go and tell a guy to write down on Shabbos, daven for so and so. So listen to what Reb Shlomo Kluger writes. He really takes strong exception to this. Sagt Reb Shlomo Kluger, Seif Dovar, Hameira Hazeh Chilol Shabbos Bekamet Dvarim. This Rav who paskin that you could go ahead and write down with a guy in order for the tzaddik to daven for him, was the Rav was a Machal Shabbos. V'cheinim yachzer hameira l'ra hazeh mehayra'asai v'yisvare b'rabim sheshkoga ha'yabyodei v'lo yosif kein arei toim. If this Rav will make a public retraction that he made a terrible mistake by letting someone go ahead and write down, even through an akum, that someone should daven for him, if he'll make a public retraction, fine. The imlav, but if this Rav doesn't, yedu shekol ha'roisav heimim v'kul kolim. The guy is out of business. His psukim cannot be relied on. V'heima kechatecha d'isura mamish v'yismechu olav b'shum ha'irah. And he writes, you should know, V'Hashem yedea ki lo l'chvaydi ani medaber v'lo l'chaved beis abba. He says, I'm not doing this for my covet, I'm doing this because I hold that Chil Shabbos was done. So therefore, Abaisai, Avad, a person should go to the Chacham Shebeir, but he's not allowed Chas v'Shalom to be Machal Shabbos, even through a Drabonon, to invoke the tefillas of the tzaddik. This Rabbi is almost by way of introduction to the main point that I want to discuss tonight. And that is, how are you allowed to go to someone to daven for you? Because the Jewish religion does not take kindly to intermediaries. In other words, we believe that everybody has equal kaiches. Everybody has a relationship with God. They don't have equal kaiches, but the pshat is every person, every yid, has a relationship with the Rebbeinu Shalom. If you have a problem, if you have a tzara, if you have a chayla, you don't need a middleman. You know the old Yissocher, cut out the middleman. You don't need a middleman. And not only you don't need a middleman, middlemen are not advisable. This rabbi in an egregious form was the shirish of the Chet HaEgel. The Chet HaEgel was all about, Klal Yisrael felt they needed an intermediary. They needed a go-between. So the question, Rabbi is, what is this concept of Yelech Etel Chacham Shebeir V'Yispal Ba'adai? How does it work? What are you going to him for? Is he acting as your intermediary? So the Maram Shik in Orach Chaim Sven Reish Tzadik Gimel deals with this shaila. But he deals with this shaila in the context of another question. And that is the whole inyan of going to the Beis HaKvaros. How do you go to the Beis HaKvaros to be mishtatech al kivrei tzadikim? Tonight for Parshas Chukas, we're going to speak about a topic that for those that come in late will not understand. This concept of going to a Beis HaKvaros, going to Kever Oves, Kever of Kedoshim, what's the pshat in that? Why is that not Doresh El HaMesim? There is a halach, it's a lav in the Torah, it's a halach in Shulchan Aruch. You're not allowed to be Doresh El HaMesim. You're not allowed. There's a word in English for this, but what? No, but with necrophilia and the necromancy, right? Yeah. I knew his neck was something, yeah. So what's the pshat in this? What's the pshat? So the Bach in Yeridea, in Siman Reish Yud Zayin, at the end of Reish Yud Zayin, the Bach quotes over here, Risi Tshuva Meis Harav Chaim Paltil. This is he's referred to as the Maharach. Al Hanoidim Leilach Lebeis HaKvaris. This is Hilchos Nedarim. There used to be people that he used to make Nedarim that they're going to go to the kever of Tzadikim. So he says over here, Tzas HaYonira Kederesh El HaMesim. The Maharach wanted to ban the whole business because it looks like Deresh El HaMesim. I Vestemir Fregen, Frekti Bach, Frekti Maharach Paltil. You'll ask me, Kolev, Shenishtatech al Kivrei Yovais Lihispalel L'Shom. 2 weeks ago, Parsha Shlach, right, Kever, Kolev was Mishtatech al Kivrei Tzadikim. He went to Kever and he went to the Kever office. What was he doing? Darish al HaMesim. So there is different because L'Shom B'Mokim Kedusha Kadesh Lo Tzei Tzilos Nishmas. Kolev wasn't going to the office to be Darish al HaMesim. He wanted to go to a Mokim Kodesh. He wanted to go to a Heilig Mokim. He wanted to go to a holy place. The Kivrei Ovis, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov are buried over there. That's Kever Ovis. That's what he was there for. So that's permitted. Well, let's say a person insulted someone in his lifetime and never got a chance to ask Mechila. So he can go to the kever of the person. That's a form of derech eretz. But, writes the Marach Paltil, Ach noshim u b'nei odom she'enin yoidin, zeh lo yodaiti halichosan lom. But he says people who are unlettered, who are unsophisticated, who go to the kever of tzaddikim thinking that they're going to the person, that zok the Marach Paltil, I don't hold them. And as such, and when people have made the door that they're going to go to the kever of tzaddikim, I go ahead and I matter the neder, and what I tell them to do is take the money that you would have spent traveling to the kever of the tzaddik and give it to tzedakah. But I'm against the whole thing for people that are not sophisticated. As they zokti Marach Paltil. Comes again the Bach, and the Bach argues. The Bach says, Mihu kvar hechziku b'minig zeh ve'ein leiche v'yesh lo zeh smach b'sefer hazoyer. So the Bach says, no, this is a well-established minig in Klal Yisrael. People have been doing this for centuries. It's perfectly legitimate. The Bach stole through a Zayar. He doesn't elaborate. But why is the Bach right? Or why do people do this? Why is this not a problem with Deiresh al HaMesim? So this is what the Maram Shik is responding to. So the Maram Shik goes over here and says, he brings over here, V'tirtz k'mo shehevi ho'en yankev v'peirusha reish perk mishameis b'bir hadavar v'shambir hazayar de'ein zeh Deiresh al HaMesim. Going to Kivrei Tzadikim is not Deiresh al HaMesim. Chada de Tzadikim chayim v'kayomim haynu nishmeisehem. Because you're not, Deiresh al HaMesim is when you go to the dead body. You're not interested in the dead body. What you're interested in is the neshama of the tzaddik that is still alive, that is still very much alive. A neshama is eternal. V'shneis, ein mevakshin mehem. Elo ikar hatfila v'hadrisha v'habakosha hu meis Hashem Yisbarach. And number two, and this is crucial, Zok the Maram Shik, you're not asking them for them anything. You're asking from Hashem. So the question then becomes, if you're asking from Hashem, and this is the other part of the tshuva, this Rabbi say is the bottom line. Why do you need the tzaddik? Why do you need the chacham? Frekti Maram Shik himself. Avo mashani chayshish to lachayra yisloimer diheyaser mishum shedarzu chachamenu zal lo yir lochelohim acherim. When we darshan lo tehei kairei atlam meichael v'leila gavriel. You're not allowed to use intermediaries. You're not allowed to be mispelled to a malach. So the question then becomes, why go to the tzaddik, to the chacham, to his kever? What do you want from him? It's the Rebbeinu Shalom that you have to talk to, and to talk to the Rebbeinu Shalom, you don't need him. Zok the Maram Shik, Rabbi says, Zok the Maram Shik, a gewaltige Wort, hat sich ein to this word. Zok the Maram Shik, that we know that Hatzur Ta'amim Pa'olai, that when the Rebbeinu Shalom punishes someone as opposed to a earthly king or an earthly judge, when a judge sentences someone to prison, to punishment, he only takes into account the person that's standing in front of him. How it affects his wife, how it affects his children, how it affects his neighbors, that a secular judge cannot take into account. Hatzur Tamim Polai, when the Rebbeinu Shalom punishes somebody, we believe that it's Tamim, which means that if it affects other people adversely, they must in some way or form be deserving of it. And if not, the Rebbeinu Shalom wouldn't do it. Well, why they're deserving of it, that's the question of the ages. But Hatzur Tamim Pa'olai, anyone that's affected by this must be roy for the punishment. Zok the Maram Shikr gewaltige Wort. When a person goes to a chacham, and he goes to a tzaddik, and he tells him his tzoros, and the tzaddik is mitztaer, the tzaddik has pain, kum techais, that now for you to have this machla not only affecting you, but it's affecting the tzaddik, because the tzaddik is bothered by your pain. And that is why now when the tzaddik davens and says, listen, take care of this fellow because I'm bothered, you have now made it that the Rebbeinu Shalom not only has to deal with you and your family, etc., but he has to deal and reckon with whether the tzaddik Hoir, the Chacham Hoir, he deserves this. That's what this is all about. Zok der Maram Shik, don't go to the tzaddik and say, daven for me. Be my intermediary, because that's giving them a power unto their own. Roy kena mispal al kivura tzadikim sheyispal ba'adenu ein neisin lehem srora elo modiat saroi lahem sheyitztaru. You go to the kever ovais and you pour out your heart and you tell them how much it bothers you, they become pained by it. You hear along this Rabbi, by including the tzaddik, you make the tzaddik part of the person, of the circle that's being affected by this. I'm given that he's a tzaddik and he has more schusim than you. If he's not deserving of this, then his tefillah can be effective because, listen, I don't deserve this. That not only should a person look for a chacham should be here, or a tzaddik should be here, but what you really want to look for in this type of person is a person who has the quality of mishtatef b'tzoras chaveroi. But if you go to a person and you tell him your tsaris and he hears but okay, next case. That type of person is not, he may be a grace tzaddik and maybe a grace Talmud Chacham, but if he's not mishtatif in your tsar, it's not going to help. What works over here, Rabbi says, is a combination. You need a person with great schusim, you need a person that's a tzaddik, you need a person that's a big Talmud Chacham that has schusim, but you need a person that feels your pain, that your pain becomes his pain. If your pain becomes his pain, so then the Rebbe now has to consider not only you, your family, and everybody has to consider the tzaddik as well. That, Dr. Maram Shik, is how this halacha works. Das is an alta kasha. Maybe when we get to that's a constant tumult about the pismen of Machnisei Rachamim. There's a special madrega of Neisa Be'olam Chaveira. A person can be a tzaddik, but he doesn't necessarily have to be margishit on a personal level. That's a madrega. That's a gewaldige madrega of Neisa Be'olam Chaveira. So some people are big people, but they don't have that particular quality. So what you're looking for over here, Rabbi Sai, is besides the other qualities that make up tzaddikim and chasidim, you're looking for the quality of Neisa Be'olam Chaveira. Thereby including this person in the circle of the people affected, so as such, he becomes part of the consideration of whether not only you, but he is deserving of this as well. The pasuk says in Parachav pasuk Yud Beis, Vayemer Hashem al Moshe ve'al Aaron Yan lehem mantem bi la'akdisheni le'inei b'nei Yisrael lochein le'saviu es ha'kohol hazeh el ha'aretz asher nasati lahem. Over here, Rabbi, so we have a very upsetting incident. The incident of the Chet of the Mei Meriva, which the pasuk tells us that Moshe, because of this incident of the Mei Meriva, of the question of getting the water from the rock, Moshe and Aaron did something wrong over here. Tzadikim HaKadosh Baruch Hu is medaktik imahen kechut hasayra. They did something wrong. You have to say the word wrong with quotation marks. Commensurate to their lofty madrega, what they did was a chet. And they paid dearly, bitterly. I always feel, perhaps it's not the right thing to do, but one of the most moving parsias in the Torah is on Simchas Torah, when we finish the Torah and we learn Lane the last 8 psukim of the Torah, Vayomasha Moshe, you see how much he wanted to go to Eretz Yisrael and how painful it is. It's so sad, that whole parsha over there. It all happened because of one little minute slip. What happened over here with the Mei Meriva. There is literally there must be a dozen, if not more, different perushim as to what Moshe Rabbeinu and Aaron did wrong, which we'll discuss in a minute. But the Ramban over here brings in the name of the Rach a different pshat, an interesting pshat, that the Chet of Mei Meriva was when Moshe Rabbeinu said, Hamin hasela hazeh noitzi lochem mayim. When Moshe Rabbeinu said, are we going to take water out of this rock? And they said the word, are we going to take water out of this rock? Zokter Rabbeinu Hanano, that there was a makom to be kaya. This gave a ability for people to think that Moshe Rabbeinu was the one who was going to give water from the rock. He should have said, Will the Rebbeinu Shalom take water out of this rock? Not Noitzi, we will take water out of this rock. because they're only shluchim. It's the Rebbeinu Shalom. So for that little grammatical error, which is not a grammatical error, but an error in inference, but lest someone think that it is Moshe Rabbeinu who's doing the taking out of the water, and not the Rebbeinu Shalom, that gave a mock-up for people to say, really, Moshe Rabbeinu is calling the shots. He's more than an intermediary. Yan asher lo hamantim lahakdisheni le'inei b'nei Yisrael. That this could have caused a chil Hashem, that people would think it's not God who's calling the shots. That's the hate of Mei Mariva. So I saw ha'ara from Reb Simcha Zisel Brody, the Chevener Yeshiva Shlita. Rabbi said, what's the context over here? The context over here, Rashi brings this. Rashi brings over here, Vayikalu zecha echad mehamekoyim shahamid machzikes hamaruba. This whole incident over here, Rabbi Sai, was a nace from the beginning to the end. There were 600,000 men over the age of 20. The conservative estimate is that there were 2 million people that were there. And everyone was there, men, women, and children. This is one of the places that Chazal say the miyat was machzikes hamaruba. Imagine Rabbi. That's impossible. So we're dealing over here on Beisai with a situation that screams out nace. And when the water flowed in an abundance. I mean, physics. There was more water that came out of the rock that the rock was capable of holding. I mean, however big the rock was, but the laws of physics is you can't hold more than the mass of the thing that's coming from. Nace. State that all the rocks that were there all poured forth water. Nace. So what do you mean that someone could have said, when Moshe Rabbeinu said, "Hamin hasela hazeh noitzi lachem mayim," that someone could have thought to say, Moshe Rabbeinu is the one that's giving the water? How could anybody be so blind? And the answer, Abaisai, is that that's all people who want to be blind, who want to deny Nisim, have the ability to do so in the face of overwhelming evidence. We see this throughout history. There are situations that Klal Yisrael has gone through that there is no rational explanation. And in our time, in our days, that there is no rational explanation to such a thing other than it is Nisim and Hashamayim. You don't have to go back to the 6-Day War, which was Nisim. We can go back to the Gulf War. 3 people were killed from the Scud rockets. That's a Nes Nigla. And yet, not all of Eretz Yisrael became Balei Tshuva. How do you deny that? They were bad quality, they were poor, they didn't know how to shoot them. You can have the whole situation crying out, Nace, Nace, Nace. But people want to be taya, people don't want to believe, they want to deny, they'll find what to say. Moshe Rabbeinu said, Hamin hasela hazeh noitzi lachem, we'll take water out of this. Oh, he's the one that's giving the water. That's the Musar Haskel. There are none so blind as those who will not see. That's how this happens. The other ha'ara Rabbi Sai, I saw Rav Gifter makes in his Sefer. As I mentioned, there are a variety of pshatim what Moshe Rabbeinu did wrong over here. Rashi seems to suggest that Moshe Rabbeinu's chait was that he hit the rock rather than speaking to the rock. We just mentioned the Rabbeinu Hananel, the Rach. That's the Rabbeinu Hananel. Says it's because they said Naitzi. Some of the Mefarshim say that Moshe Rabbeinu said Shimu no HaMeirim. He referred to Klal Yisrael as people that are rebellious, people that go astray. That's no way to talk to Klal Yisrael. Some Mefarshim say he said Shimu no HaMeirim. Please listen. He shouldn't talk like that. There's a bunch of people like this. He shouldn't say the word no. So here you have Rabbi say what seems to us at first glance as a very innocuous situation. Moshe Rabbeinu did nothing wrong. But what do you see? That if you sit down and you take an act and you analyze it and you go over it and you put it under a microscope, you can find many things wrong. Even with the even with the likes of a Moshe Rabbeinu. Haskell is that if Moshe Rabbeinu is in one act, you can find so many different things that are possibly wrong. So there is a makam to scrutinize what we do sometimes, that which we even think are to be mitzvahs. It's not so pashut. That's what it means, yifash beish b'maisav. A person has to examine his ways. Fortunately, we look sometimes, I don't understand it. I still don't understand what I'm doing wrong. We have to be mefashpesh in our maisim, like the Rishonim are mefashpesh in this mais of Chet Mei Meriva, and then we can perhaps find that our deeds are not as perfect as we would think they are. The final comment I'd like to share with you tonight is in Perek Aleph Pasuk Ches, where the Pasuk says that there was a plague of snakes that came and attacked Klal Yisrael, and in order to stop the Magefa, the Pasuk says, Asei lecha sarah v'sim aisai al neis. The terufa, the antidote for the attacks by the snakes was that Moshe Rabbeinu was to make a nachash hanacheshes. He went ahead and he fashioned a snake out of copper and he put it up al hanes, he put it up on a stand. And anyone who was bitten by the snakes would look at this figure of the snake and he would go ahead and he would be healed. So again, I saw an unpublished ha'ara from Reb Chaim Shmulevitz Zecher Tzadik Livracha. It seems rather ironic that the terufa and the antidote for the snake bite should be a snake. I mean, it would make more sense to go ahead and to put up a little vial of anti-snake serum, anti-poison serum. We got sick by a snake, this is the antidote. But the last thing that would be effective is the snake itself. You want the opposite. Why? What's the symbolism over here? That the thing that caused the pain, the snakes that caused the problem, is the item to look at to be cured from the problem. Yissocher Frand that when we get angry at someone, we go ahead and we hit them, or we yell at them. When we love someone, we want to be nice to someone, so we help them, we kiss them, we hug them. two different emotions that are operating over here. One is anger and one is love, or one is hate and one is love. With the Ribbon Shalom Lahavdil, it's all from the same source. When the Ribbon Shalom punishes us, it is not out of anger. It's, again, difficult sometimes to relate to this, but when the Ribbon Shalom does punish, it is either because he wants us to grow from the experience, he wants the experience to be a kapara for us, he's using it as an Yissocher, but whichever it is, it's not out of spite, not out of anger. And therefore, the same makor, the same source from which the pain comes from, is the source from which the refuah and the trufa and the cure can come from. The snakes cause the pain, but the snakes can cause the cure. Because the pain wasn't out of the anger, wasn't out of the hate, out of the spite of the Ribbon Shalom. It was a form of his love. It's kikasha yaser yisas benai Hashem lokacha miyasreka. When we punish our children, it's not out of a sense of anger. At least it shouldn't be. It's out of a sense that this is what they deserve, this is what they need, this is what they need to rectify themselves. So therefore, in the context of the Ribbon Shalom, it is perfectly legitimate that the snake that was memis can be the snake that's mechaya. Because once the person has gained the experience from what he was supposed to gain by the snake, now he can look to the very source for his cure. Because by the Ribbon Shalom, it's all from the same source of love and concern for his children.
For additional tapes by Rabbi Frand, please contact the Yad Yechil Institute at Post Office Box 511, Owings Mills, Maryland 21117. The phone number is area code 410-358-0416.
This year was presented by Rav Yissocher Frand Shlita. Brahma supporter PC.